Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the New Era podcast. I'm your co host, M2 Dave, and I'm here with my co host, Tom Brady. Also, let me give you a hint on who's on the podcast. Let me redo the introduction in the following manner. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever you guys are watching in the world, I hope that you're doing okay. If you don't know who that is, that's your fault.
That was very good.
Thank you, thank you. So we have Mike Hollow on the podcast. Dude, thank you so much for being here, for joining. A lot of people in the past when we have asked for them to be on a podcast, they say no. I'm not going to mention any names, but we really, really appreciate you being on here.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to, bro. It's a pleasure. Sorry for being late. Someone was on the bench press and I was trying to get them off. It took forever.
Oh, no worries. I know the feeling. Believe me. That's why I try to
So
go early
annoying.
in the morning. For me, I got to go early. Otherwise, it's a social club at the gym
Yeah,
afterwards.
do you know what the problem was? I stupidly turned on Tekken beforehand and I was on a roll and I was going to get back to my Tekken Emperor rank. I got there, I realized the time, so I rushed to the gym. So that's why I'm late.
Oh, okay. No worries.
No, no worries, man. We're just happy that you're here again. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll talk about Tekken later.
Yeah.
We have to address, I guess, the two elephants in the room. One, Homelander. The other, as a famous meme once was, helicopter, helicopter, right? Cyrax is back better than ever. One bar, helicopter. Twitter's going crazy. Everybody's going crazy. Mike Hollow, take it any way which you would like.
Well, I mean, I was sitting here yesterday playing Tekken when I got messages from Sikander's Discord. People from Sikander's Discord were telling me that Cyrax has come back. One of my friends, Alexis, and I thought she was just taking the piss. So I re-downloaded Mortal Kombat 1 just to see because I thought it'd be hilarious, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. They're saying that it's a bug. I don't know if it's a bug. This feels like the kind of thing that NRS would have seen and fixed immediately because Cyrax was a menace for so long. I downloaded Homelander because I had him for free because I bought the season pass, and then the first person I always go to check to see how crazy the character is Sonic Fox. So I went to his channel and I saw him playing Rewind, and it just looked like the most stupid shit I've ever seen in my life.
Can you describe? You don't like the way I thought initially, my opinion, like he's gonna be a zoner. He doesn't look
Mm.
like too much of a zoner. I don't know, like the lasers kind of seem unsafe, at least the grounded ones.
Well, from
Go
what I
ahead.
could see, he looks like he can be played anywhere. I was watching Sonic fight and Rewind, and Sonic had got him in the corner, and he had done like a flight cancel. You know that overhead punch he does, where he sort of conks you on the head. He was just doing that over and over again, and Rewind was trying to get out of the corner, and he couldn't. I don't know if it's just because he was also unfamiliar with Homelander, but from what I could see in the matches, the character looks extremely powerful to the point where he doesn't even look like he needs a cameo to run you over. So it'll be interesting to see how it develops. But I think he can be played anywhere from what I tested and from what I've seen.
I think I would agree with that, which would kind of go along with, at least with some of the better characters, right? Because they can be played in multiple ways. Tom would
Mm,
say,
This patch was a massive L, and I tried to be positive on the game, but I'm going to take a big piss out of it right now. There is no excuse for NetherRealm Studios here, and of course, the shills are going to make them. Just on Homelander, before I get to where we are, let me tell you where we actually were. We a couple of months ago we got this patch that seemed like this mega patch, but it was really a medium step, less than medium patch. But it seemed like, oh my gosh, mega update. We got some quality of life changes. We got a couple of nerfs, and we got some characters that had some new moves. And it seemed like a big deal because no contact from Ed Boon, NRS radio silent, just the game was going on a down note, no real updates of consequence, and then they dropped this patch on us, and it wasn't a giant step in the right direction. It was a less than medium step in the right direction, but a step in the right
mm,
direction nonetheless. I came back to the game for a month and a half. I was streaming it every day. A lot of people came back because it gave us hope that things are going the right direction, and people saw how fun it looked for these characters that got some new moves, and then there's the balance changes. Then it's like, okay, this is where they're going, and the game is going to be extremely fun and enjoyable. They're going that direction step by step, better late than never, even though it was taking quite a while. a lot of people were waiting for when the next update was going to be. We didn't think it would be here because we're only 10 days out from the Pro Comp. They're not going to overhaul the game 10 days before the Pro Series finale. But Homelander was something that was very anticipated because just he's an iconic character. He's one of my favorite characters. A lot of people were looking forward to him. And then they released all these bugs with him where he can move forward and backwards extremely fast. Bugs where he can't flight cancel at certain times. Bugs where he can move backwards without tapping back so he can block and then move backwards at the same time. Just extremely weird. And then, of course, my favorite NRS special, the Corner Block Infinite. They must want to sell you a Billy Butcher cameo that can give you some temp fee and get out of it down the line. And only people that watch The Boys will know what I'm saying. But it's just one of those things where we see Ermac and the previous DLC characters seem to be getting more and more developed as they were launched. And then we got Ermac. Mike Hollow, you did a video where you said this looks like where now we have 7 months of development. Now look at how the characters look, right?
Yeah.
And then Homelander is at the tail end of their development cycle, almost 1 year into the game, like 10 months in. And he looks like an early development beta character. And it's like, how did they have almost a year to develop him? And they're stuck back in looking like early development stage, which just shows just how behind the game was. And their development still is. It makes it look like when they get it right, it was a fluke. And when they get it wrong, that's par for the course.
Yeah, just to give the people a little context. So, guys, if you do a flight cancel with Homelander, what is it? Quarter scroll back 4, you flight, forget the trigger buttons. Then if you go down, like you land, for some reason, you move faster, which makes no sense. And yet you can literally... Yeah, you can also literally, I forgot which video this was. Oh, I believe it was Rufflemonger.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can literally also crouch and then move, which it just looks so goofy. I have never seen anything goofy like this. So, and then the block the infinite is if you go into flight cancel in the corner and you just press 4, like the hit stun is so long, whatever, it's so fast, however you want to describe it, you can literally just loop it over and over again. So, and I think there's something also wrong with his fatal blow. I don't know what's going on.
And I'm showing it on the screen, Bob, for people that are watching.
Okay, yeah. So all this kind of leads me to believe that the Cyrax thing is unintentional. So
I haven't even gotten to that, man. I mean,
isn't that even worse though? How long has it been out now, and they're still not testing characters properly? They're just dropping patches. That's kind of seems almost disrespectful to their player base.
Which is also bringing me to the next thing, the Cyrax thing. For those who don't know, they have reverted Cyrax to his day 1 form. Now, this is not in the patch notes, but let me tell you what that means. While Johnny Cage was nerfed, he still seemed to be the most powerful character in the game. And now he's got Cyrax. So he combos off of his back throw all the time. Doesn't need Chameleon to be in Katana. Now he always gets it at any point with Cyrax. And he gets his Cyrax pressure back. Raiden. Now Storm Cell will combo. So they nerfed him. But Storm Cell will combo again. His back 2 will combo again with the up helicopter. So it doesn't need any, and he's still plus now off of Storm Cell. Not as plus as he once was, but still plus. So of course, you can still jump out of down 1 Storm Cell, but he can still do a string, hit confirm full combo on hit, on block, go into Storm Cell, keep advantage, overhead low stuff, both lead to combos now with Cyrax, back throw stuff. I mean, just everything. Storm Cell, full combos again. All this from 1 cameo again. And I'm not saying that was a bad thing to begin with. I'm just telling you what is brought back. Baraka Cyrax is back. Scorpion Cyrax. And Scorpion Cyrax was the least of all that. I mean, it's not like, oh my God, Scorpion. But Kenshi now gets Cyrax back. So now he's just going to pull Sento out constantly for free many, many times. Just everything changes now. In how the
far
game
away
is.
from Final Combat are we?
About 10, maybe 9-10 days. So
yeah, 9 days is supposed to be in
and Sonic
Canada.
Fox put a tweet out that asked, hey, is this basically, the tweet said word for word, is there any final say if the Cyrax changes are intentional or not tweeted at Mortal Kombat, at Dizzy, at NRS Esports, still no response. And can you imagine if Capcom or Namco did this? Their community wouldn't be like, we thriving, boys, be positive. They'd be like, what is this? Your Pro Series tournament for, and those games, $1 million is a few days away and we can't get a ruling? This is $200,000. Look, $200,000 on the line, and we can't get a ruling. Silence. And I think they don't know what to do because I don't know if it was intentional or not. If it was, I feel like it would be in the patch notes, would it not? It's something that clearly, if you're going to revert that, unless they're so clueless, they're like, is that really a big deal that we reverted Cyrax? We'll just, and they forgot, which I can't believe that they would think that way.
Surely not.
I think they're going to try to walk. I think if they walk it back, it makes them even look worse. So I think they're going to try to mask it as, well, instead of nerfing Chameleon, we wanted to buff some cameos back. And I know Dave over here said, well, they should revert Striker, revert this, revert that. If you revert
they should.
It doesn't matter because you have Cyrax. Cyrax does what Chameleon does, what Striker does, what a lot of these other cameos do, all in one. He's like 4 cameos in one, which is the reason why they nerfed him to begin with. And I'm all for Cyrax coming back. Let him come back. I mean, Sub-Zero can't use him, but he can't use anything. But I'm all for it because we want to see more cameos being used. But it just seems like, again, the cameos everything has to combo, everything has to be save, everything has to be plus. And if it doesn't do that, the cameo is not usable. They brought back the most meta of meta cameos. So he's overwriting 75% of the cameos in the game just in him.
Isn't that every cameo? Like,
but I mean, people wanted to see cameos being buffed in different ways. They don't want. I guess they didn't want everyone to do what Cyrax does because then you would still just pick Cyrax, right? Like, hey, this cameo did, or maybe characters should do different things that don't require you mandatory to pick Cyrax. Like, Rain is going to go back to Rain Cyrax. Kenshi is back on
That's
Kenshi
the
Cyrax.
character you forgot
Baraka is back on Baraka Cyrax. Johnny is back on Johnny Cyrax. I mean, all these characters are back to where they were.
I do think it's very, very telling that they've done this, and maybe if it was a mistake, they're unaware. But
Geras is back to Geras Cyrax, by the way, also. Geras Cyrax.
Yeah, if somebody was manning their social medias, knowing that Final Combat is about a week and a bit away, they should have gotten that straight away. So to me, this gives more credence to the idea that they do not view this as a game for the tournament scene. They don't care. Because if this was in the Tekken scene, now that I'm like more integrated in the Tekken scene, they would have been torched on Twitter last night. They would have been finished. Arslan, Nee, all of them guys, they would have torched them for this. So the fact that people are not like really throwing arms up, it feels to me, and this isn't like shade on the MK community, but it feels to me more like acceptance. Like, this is just how the game is. Shit goes up, that tits up every other week. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I can assure you that they are aware. I'm not going to mention names because I know, not because I'm friends with any of them. I know because there's a developer who's active on Test Your Might once in a while. And he was there present yesterday. I saw the name. So I'm sure that they know. And because they must have seen the post and people asking, like, whether it's a post or like a status update, which is like Twitter. It's like, yeah, what is this? Like, what's going on? So I'm sure they know. But again, we're talking about NRS communication here. I think they probably have a ladder that they have to climb just to get a permission to post something on freaking Twitter. I still think it's unintentional. But the funny thing is, if you have to fuck up one thing, why does it have to be that one move?
Yeah, that's.
I'm not even saying it's a bad thing for Cyrax to be reverted back. The thing is, the reason for them doing that to Cyrax was all we saw was Cyrax and Kung Lao. So then you should revert Kung Lao, you should revert Serena, you should revert Goro, when they nerfed Cyrax, they also somewhat, I think, added like 2 seconds of cooldown or 2.5 seconds of cooldown to Serena as well as Goro. Goro doesn't get his cooldown back. Kung Lao doesn't get his cooldown back. His hat still doesn't catch you airborne. So they basically brought back a day one cameo and kept the other ones nerfed. And maybe they were thinking, okay, well, we'll do this so that Chameleon is whatever. But it's like, I don't know that it was a step in the. You nerfed Raiden because you're like, okay, well, we nerfed Cyrax. It just doesn't make any sense. You nerfed Raiden because they said, well, we nerfed Cyrax, but people are still doing the same thing with Kano and Goro in some instance. So they said, we're going to nerf Raiden. So no more this. So this way, it doesn't matter what cameo you pick. And then they give Cyrax back. So not only is he plus again, Storm Cell combos again, back two combos, back throw. I don't know if his back throw. I don't remember if it did or not. It's been so long. But either way, he gets all this back, and it's like you nerfed him because he was still doing that anyway. So you're like, now we'll make sure no cameo allows him to do it. And then you bring a cameo back that allows them to do it. Why even nerf him in the first place then? It doesn't, it just some things that are just like counterproductive. And I'm like, oh, well, and this goes why I say, people say, why do I criticize the NRS? If it is, I don't care what argument people make. If they say it's a bug, then it's like, how does a bug like this happen 10 days before a $200,000 tournament and no response, no ruling from them? And then you have Sonic Fox, who's a clear favorite to win, saying, hey, 200K on the line, what's the ruling? And that was yesterday. We're 24 hours later, still no ruling. Because people are wondering, should I take this? Should I prepare to take this into tournament? And
that's the worst part, not being able to prepare properly because you don't know what's going on.
Yeah. And then if you are someone that says, no, they did it on purpose, stop hating, Tom, the negative talk. I mean, it's like you nerf a character like Raiden, and then because of whatever with Cyrax, and then you couldn't use Cyrax anymore, so now he's using Kano, whatever, and then you basically reverted, and what was the point of even nerfing him in the first place then? It just, none of this really makes any sense to me at all. Like, either way you go with them, and if they say, they did it because they want to combat. Well, Tom, they did it because Cyrax is going to combat Chameleon because everyone's complaining about Chameleon. This goes back to the point that NRS will always do the least amount of work possible. Should we make the cameos more useful? What's the easiest thing we can do? Oh, revert Cyrax. Should we revert Cyrax and Kung Lao and Goro? No, that's even too much work to do that. That takes 45 seconds instead of 30. Just revert Cyrax. So I don't care if you say it was a bug or intentional. It doesn't look good. And if anyone wants to tell me it was intentional, try to justify now that NRS is not the company that will always do the least amount of work possible. They have become the employee that will never do any work unless the boss is staying over them watching. That's what they are. Lazy, 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 or incompetent. They're either incompetent or they're lazy. Take your pick.
Well, let me just say this. I think, look, mistakes happen in gaming, whether,
a $200,000 mistake, and you don't even tell one of your top two players?
Hold on. The difference is, I don't think, look, people can criticize them for their mistakes, and I think we all should. But mistakes happen, the mistakes have happened in Tekken, in their games, and, they have happened in Street Fighter, Guilty Gear, etc. The difference is, if this had happened to like Tekken 7 or Tekken 8,
how it's handled.
Harada would have treated almost immediately. And so you're like, yeah, this is a mistake, which we have seen this. I know because I used to play Tekken, and I know what the cycle is. In fact, there were a couple with just Tekken 7's, long patching, lifespan, and they were like, yeah, this is a glitch. We didn't intend this. It's going to be removed. Before, of course, it's NRS, so it takes an eternity to, what is going on. Nobody's saying anything. Even they're online, they're not communicating. So that's really the difference, in my opinion. Mike,
it's how mistakes are handled.
Yeah, communication is key, especially in the social media age. I mean, obviously, I have my gripes with Tekken, but I very rarely get mad at Harada or Michael Murray because when something happens, they're there immediately. There's something going on, there's some sort of communication being put across. Even if I didn't necessarily like what they were saying, they're very active. So we know if we want to reach them, we can tag them, and Harada will more than likely see it, and he responds to us sometimes. He even takes part in like messing about the community about the Waffle House and all that stuff. So if NRS communicated more of its community, I think it would go a long way. I think Mortal Kombat players feel like they've been hung out to dry. Something happens, and then we're sort of just like, well, we don't know what's going on. We don't hear from them for a week. Their live streams are not really live streams. They're pre-recorded. I don't think that they're live. And and then they just go silent until the next character drops.
The rumor is that they have to get permission to have communication, and I believe it's true because Namco works for Namco. NRS doesn't work for NRS, and NRS works for WB. Again, I'm not making excuses. I'm just telling you from what I'm hearing. So that's the reason why they're not allowed to say anything on Twitter, because they have to approve it by HR. I know it sounds stupid, but that's really how, I think that's actually what's going on. So
Are they saying that Warner Brothers is silencing them, and that's why they can't speak out?
from what I hear, and I don't want to. I honestly, I don't want to like speculate, but kind of from what I understand is that's kind of what's going on. Like, so will it 16-bit or I don't know, Paul? They just can't say on Twitter. So again, they just can't make comments. I think HR has to approve it. Again, I don't want to speculate because I don't want to.
I want to reference a tweet from Tekken Master very quickly. I just read it. He says, everyone thinks that Cyrax is like how he used to be. You guys forgot that they scaled his combo damage, as well as flawless blocking does negate meter build now as well. So he says he's fine now because there are some mechanics in the game that have changed around Cyrax. My point is not that I'm all for Cyrax being there, but the same can be same for other things. Kung Lao should be fine now. Old Serena should be fine now. Goro should be fine now. Striker should be fine now. Then revert it all. Don't just revert this. Beta Sub-Zero should be fine now. The most broken character in the history of Mortal Kombat, Beta MK1 Sub-Zero, according to the community. They should all revert it back then. Again, and I know what the weird, confusing to me thing is the Raiden aspect. I am fine with the Cyrax revert as long as it wasn't an accident. Then it's like, and it's kind of weird that they're not communicating. But to Tekken Master's point, I'm fine with it. And he says it's healthy for the game. That's fine. But didn't they just nerf Raiden? Because they were basically saying, even though we nerfed Cyrax, he's still doing this with other cameos. Yes or no?
I think the problem here is that NRS is being held to the standard of Capcom and Tekken, Capcom and Namco, two developers that understand how to balance games to a much more than NRS does. I think NRS has had some like big hits like MKX, but for the most part, I don't think they understand like tournament level balancing, and I think maybe that's where the anger's coming from. Because their decisions don't really make sense. They don't follow like a path. And also the lack of communication, like what you were saying earlier with them having to go for approval. Do we know how many studios work under Warner Brothers? Because I'm sure we could probably look into how many studios are connecting with the audience and then just seeing if it's NRS. Because if it's just NRS, then it's like, well, is it Warner Brothers then? Or is NRS just being lazy? But
Warner Brothers has been around for a long time. Warner Brothers just didn't this year issue a gag order for studios. They communicated in MK9, they communicated in MKX, in Injustice. Yeah. Now, all of a sudden, this is just more copium. Now they're oppressed under this bureaucracy. This is just the bullshit that shills sell you. You know, that, oh, now they're oppressed. They weren't oppressed in 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. They're just now oppressed by Warner Brothers. Shut up. That is the most garbage, true underdog, for lack of better words, stuff that, and no offense to him, but that's what I mean by copium. Like, it's just like, it's clear that this was never the case. Why? What sense would it make right now? And I didn't mean to call out true underdog, but he's, to me, like, he's always trying to see the positive side of everything, as he did say. But even if I were to say this is the positive side of, hey, look, they want to tell us, they're just trapped. They weren't trapped for 12 years. Now they're trapped now.
Well, I mean, to be fair, like I don't want to take a stance on it because we don't know what's going on behind closed doors. But there is the possibility that upper management could change and they could come down and say, look, when you're no longer allowed to do this without our approval. It's happened to me at my job where they've said you can't do this anymore. So it's possible that NRS are just being lazy and dismissive, but it's also possible that Warner Brothers have changed their rulings on how they communicate on social media, especially because social media can be nuclear. And from what I've seen, again, I don't mean to take this a shot at the Mortal Kombat community, but when MK players get upset about something, it becomes less about the game and it seems to become a bit more vitriolic. That's just what I've observed. So maybe they just decided to become hands off of it.
There's no patch notes. There's no way that patch notes are not allowed. Because if that was the case, they could release a patch and then it could be like, well, they can't release patch notes for 2 months because they don't have permission. If this was intended, they could put an addendum. I have seen them quickly add patch notes, where they did an update and then a few days later there was another update and then the patch notes say X, Y, and Z. So I'm sure that they can at least do patch notes, to cover the changes in the game, right? So surely they can do an addendum to the patch note. And they didn't even do that here. And like I said, to me, the weird thing is
sometimes it takes a while to figure out what the problem is. It's like, okay, people have to go back to the office and figure. I don't think these people are lazy. Look, I competed against them. I think they tried their best. The communication, that's trash. That's garbage. For being known there for 10, 15 years, I don't want to rant about that anymore. The fact of the matter is, like when Street Fighter, when Street was first released, and he had that glitch, right? Or there was a glitch with the inputs. You could escape throws was like an unstoppable option select. Like, Nap was like, Capcom was like, we don't have to fix it because we don't know what's going on. We just need a little bit more time. So maybe there's something going on here as well. So I think I would like to give them the benefit of the doubt.
I'm not giving him anything. No.
Well,
because a patch note is an addendum. It's a patch note.
That's for you wrong.
There is a
$200,000. Whether it's intended or not.
There is a $200,000 tournament, and they can't even get a ruling on if it's legal or not, or if it's. They may have to ban Cyrax, or if it's. This is to me. Either way, to me, this is a blunder. The Raiden thing. So there are two things to me with Cyrax that baffle me. One, again, Raiden. They literally nerfed him because they're like, he's still doing a lesser degree what he was doing with Cyrax by using Kano. But he doesn't get the launcher at least because he has to use Goro for that. So it's like he still has to, but we put more cooldown on Goro, so he's still forced to use Kano. So he gets the plus frames and all this stuff, but he doesn't get the launcher. And then they were like, that's still too much. Everybody still complained. So they said, now we're going to go ahead and they still nerfed him, to Tekken Master's point, with the chip, flawless blocking, negating chip, with flawless blocking, negating meter building, which was something new. The chip was always there, but the negating meter building was added. So, and they were still like, Raiden Kano is too much, it's too much, it's too much. So now they said, okay, well, since obviously nerfing the cameo is, they're just going to find another way to do it. Now we will nerf the character. Now he can no longer do this. And then they put Cyrax back in, which I think is a good thing for the game. But now Raiden is doing string into Storm Cell, into Cyrax. If the string hits, full combo. If it's blocked, Storm Cell into Cyrax, he's still plus. Not plus as much, but still plus. If you challenge and think he's going to stagger the string, and he does Storm Cell and you get hit, it's still, even if Raiden has no bar, it's a meterless launcher of Storm Cell. So he got back his meterless launcher, all the stuff that, he had. Obviously, he doesn't build the meter anymore, and obviously Cyrax doesn't give you the same combo damage, but you still get the combo off the overhead. So there's a lot they took from Raiden to say you shouldn't be able to do this, you know, and and if they with Cyrax the way it is, Kano is now worthless. Striker is now worthless. And even if they buffed Kano and Striker, they both would still be worthless. Which tells me that Kano, if they're going to keep Cyrax the way it is, truly healthy for the game, Kano needs to do something else. Remove all his abilities and give him new ones. They do different things. Striker, give him new abilities, do something. You cannot, if this is intentional, you cannot have a game where every cameo is a lesser version of Cyrax. Then there's only one cameo to pick, Cyrax. So I think it's a good thing. It's a good thing. But it just shows they need to change that because what Cyrax does.
There is no changing it because, as we have said, like on
and why don't they revert Kung Lao? Then revert Kung Lao. Then revert Serena. Then revert Goro. That's a good thing, but revert those.
No, I agree, but the problem is the cameo system will always be unbalanced by design, and we have.
Okay, then stop trying to balance it. Keep it in balance. Revert Cyrax, keep him the way it is.
Exactly.
Revert Kung Lao, revert Goro, revert Serena so they get less cooldown. And then just take the other cameos and say, you know what? Screw it. It's the Wild West. Every cameo has a 10, 12-second cooldown, period. Done. Just say it's all in balance.
I think I would be okay with that. Obviously,
I would be okay with it.
To be respectful to the competitors who have to compete in 10 days, I wouldn't do it right now. But
I would have reverted Kung Lao. I would have. If you're going to revert Cyrax, I would have reverted Kung Lao.
No, again, I would be okay. I think we need to wait on the official word before we explode on this matter. It's fun to talk about, and it's fun to blow them up because of whether it's intentional or not. Whether it's their competence or lack thereof in this case. I think we should wait until the end of this week and see what's going on. And I'm sure at that point they have to say something because at that point, the biggest tournament, of the game's lifespan will be in less than a week. So I think we need to relax, see what's going on, and wait for their official word before we, say, okay, revert everything, which I'm for, by the way. But we don't know what exactly is going on, especially when you consider all the glitches that Homelander already has. So you don't even know what's going on, right? Is he supposed to move faster after he drops from this flight? Nobody knows. Like nobody knows what's going on.
Well, as it turns out, I can tell you when they're going to give you communication. I can tell you when. When the sun turns into a red giant and engulfs the earth. Let's find out when that is. I'll give you a date. I'll give you a date right now. Siri, when will the sun turn into a red giant and engulf the earth?
The sun will turn into a red giant in about 5 billion years.
There you go. Well, so that's when that's when the update will come, boys. That's when we'll wait for it.
Well, let me say this, and this might be my hot take, and I want you guys to respond. So if I had to rate, the big three patching, I would say Street Fighter goes definitely first. This is when I'm getting myself into problems. I would put NRS, yes, MK1 patching ahead of Tekken's. Tekken 8 has the worst patching. You talk about nonsense. I will paraphrase because I don't want to look at the notes right now. For two of their characters, it literally says we're literally going to over nerf them because we don't know what to do and we're going to deal with them later. Like that's literally what they said. So if your competitor is like, what? What is this? I'm referring to June, who was nerfed heavily in the last patch, even though she didn't win anything. And Azucena was also over nerfed, but her is more understandable because she actually got results. So how's that different than this? That is the very definition of incompetence. And of course, the reason I've been so harsh on the content creators of the Tekken community, not so much Mike, I promise you, but like idiots like Main Man 3 and Frame Whisperer, it just goes and on and on and on nonstop. That's why I respect Mike because he's one of the few people who actually talks about what the game actually lacks. So if you generally enjoy the game, you want to go online and you want to learn the game, right? Guess what? You're out of luck because it's a first to one in your in the mode essentially that you want to learn the game from. So how are you supposed to learn how to play the game, right? You run into a Link player whom you see once in a blue moon or a Bear player. Well, maybe next week again you get to play them again. And the first to one, whether win or lose doesn't matter because you can't learn the matchup. So that is incredibly frustrating. Except what are the content creators talking about? Who's broken? who's a fraud, who's being carried by which characters. I don't give a damn about any of that stuff. Why is that even your content? Show me how to play the game. Argue for stuff, that's going to make us better players. Now, obviously, there's some artistic liberty we all take, right? To be entertaining to people, to be informative, etc., etc. But it's like at some point, this garbage has got to stop. Mike, am I right or wrong on this? I want your take.
Well, to start with the main man, like I really do, I like main man's content. I think I've learned a lot about Tekken from him. I think he does have some hot takes that throw people sometimes, and admittedly, I can't keep up with everything he's doing because he streams a lot. But with Frame Whisper, I watch a lot of Frame Whisper's content. I think Frame Whisper is a very intelligent individual that has like, I wouldn't say like a bad temper, but he feels very like hard done by Tekken and its practices. I think his focus has been more on the business practices, which I think is a good thing to highlight. I think with me, I've been trying to highlight what made Tekken special. And when Tekken came out, I already knew that it was going to be a bit broken. That's never really been my issue with a fighting game because we've been playing fighting games since we were kids, right? They've all been a mess when they come out the first year. I don't think there's anything wrong talking about it, but my problem with Tekken 8 and what I've tried to focus on is the small things that they've taken away from Tekken that made it special, like the death matches, and like being able to play the neutral. Because I saw your comment about the heat mechanic, and to me, the reason I focused on the heat mechanic is because it feels like it's overwhelmed Tekken. It doesn't feel like the drive system where it's been built into Street Fighter, and you can't have Street Fighter 6 without it, and they've refined it. And although it has its drawbacks, and I'm sure there's things that people can pick apart about it, it feels like it's intertwined with Street Fighter 6. And so any little change you make to that system changes the entire game. But with the heat mechanic, it feels like it's been dumped on Tekken. And the reason I did that stream to run the experiment to see how it would play is because I wanted to see, is this just going to feel like Tekken 7.5, or is it actually going to be its own thing? Does it need the heat mechanic to be Tekken 8? In my opinion, it doesn't. I think I've been harsh on the heat mechanic, and I acknowledge that because it is year one. But at the same time, I don't think there's anything wrong with pointing out the problems with it. And I've seen quite a lot of content creators talking about it. Sometimes people maybe they don't put their point across the right way, but I think I understand where the anger's coming from everyone. And the problem is that because the heat mechanic has overwhelmed the gameplay, it's making all the other issues seem much, much worse, like the chip damage, like the armored launchers, and then the business practices. When you have the central system pissing everybody off, all the other little branches start to look like they're a bigger problem than what they are. So I think that's where the anger from Tekken is coming from right now.
I will agree with you to the extent that most of my disagreements with these content creators, they don't come what they're criticizing in terms of the business practices or, you know, um, criticizing, I don't know, how something could be better. My disagreements are explicitly coming from the fact that when they give their opinions in balance, I just want to run, 100 miles at a wall because I can't understand what they're talking about. For example, Mayman Sui, just the other day, whatever, last week, made a video complaining about another top tier. Do you know what he was doing in Tekken 7? Doing the same fucking thing, complaining about top tiers. Except
Was that
now,
the Feng Wei video?
no, no. For example, when he made his last Tekken 7 tier list, he called Zafina's backdash, you know what? Broken. Of course it's broken. But now, like, essentially, I already know what videos he's gonna make. Again, he's funny, he's entertaining, but that doesn't do anything like for the community at all. Like, he never met a nerf he didn't like. So, like, what am I supposed to think of him? Like, he complains about Feng nonstop. He complains about Jin now in Tekken 8. He did the same thing in Tekken 7. I know this because I've been watching, well, not so much recently because it's all the same thing, but I've been following his channel for a long time before most people even play Tekken, or going back to Tekken Tag 2 for that matter. And I just think, what value does that add? Now, I don't really care what he says, but I do care that he has influence and he can actually change stuff because Arata watches him. That's what I care about. I really don't care what he says as long as he didn't have influence. He can talk about, like he made a Lars video called Lars AIDS Broken. cancerous to the community. A character he didn't. This character has never placed. He never made a top at any like significantly major, as far as I know. Maybe one online tournament. Kaizoku Lars, who's a German Lars player, if I'm not mistaken. He got, I think, top 8 one. If not won the tournament. Like, but what are these words? This is toxicity just for the sake of being toxic. I don't know what else to say.
I
That's what I'm
think
referring to.
I think that like when people say broken a lot, I think the word is thrown around too much. I don't think there's any broken characters in Tekken 8. I think a broken character is, I don't know if like you guys ever followed Smash Brothers Brawl, but a broken character would be Meta Knight. He's literally game breaking. There's other examples of like broken characters that literally shattered the way the game is played and maybe like glitch the game or whatever. I think there's characters that are really powerful in Tekken 8. I think I don't have a problem with main man's perspective because people have a problem with my perspective on the game, and they also think I'm talking shit because I'm a Feng Wei player, and Feng Wei is seen as the strongest character in the game. But the way I view Tekken is I think there's very powerful characters on paper, and then in practice there's characters that dominate, and I think that's reflected in the stats. But when I put that point across, some people don't like it, which is fine. Like I'm all for multiple perspectives because I think that I can sometimes I can look at things wrong as well, right? I'm not perfect, but main man, I think he's more of like looking at it on paper. Like when he did the Feng Wei video, he was showing all of Feng Wei's things, and everything he said was correct. The only issue that I had is that if you look at tournament results and if you look at tournament showings for characters, and if you look at online, the strongest character in the game is underrepresented. He's in the bottom 10 right now, I think, less than 2% of the player base. And my argument is that it's the same argument that I had on Soul Calibur 5. The strongest character in the game was nowhere to be seen because there's one thing to have very powerful buttons and show everybody the powerful buttons and show what the character is capable of. And it's another thing to put into practice against characters that are extremely low effort for high reward. So that's what Tom said about Sub-Zero in Mortal Kombat 11. He wasn't the strongest character in the game, but he was extremely low effort for super high reward. And so when I look at Tekken and the takes that I have, people don't like it because I'm a Feng Wei player. But the fact of the matter is that Jin is getting played by almost half of the people playing Tekken because it's very, very, very easy to get the W of him versus characters like I don't know. I don't want to use Feng Wei. Maybe even Elisa. Elisa's a little bit harder to play than Jin. As funny as that might sound to hear, but there's a reason why he's so highly picked. But again, my perspective and main man's perspective on Tekken is very, very different. I enjoy listening to what he has to say because I don't think the way he does, and it's good to have voices that don't match up, in my opinion.
Uh, the reality though is that nobody who's winning at the highest level with Fang is being carried or is a fraud or who's winning in Tekken 8? The same people who won in Tekken 7. And you know who won in Tekken 7? For the most part, except the Pakistani the scene who came along.
Yeah.
The same people who won in Tekken Tag 2 and the same people who won in Tekken 6. Knee's obviously the most obvious example because even if you're not a Tekken player, you may recognize the name. So this is all theatrics. Just now, is he wrong when he says Fang is this, Fang is that? And so this is theatrics for the masses because what he's essentially saying, the guy who beat you, you're a Fujin rank, the Fang guy who beat you, he beat you because of Fang, not because he's a better player. But that's nonsense. Most people who are the blue ranks, which by the way includes me, we're losing not because Dragonov is broken or this character is broken. We're losing because maybe we didn't escape 2 throws in a round, or maybe because we didn't punish correctly. That's the reason. That's what should be pushing. We shouldn't be pushing these theatrics, dramatics, and he literally does that half the time. And I have no patience or respect for that. That's why I think it's. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I just think Main Man is very passionate about Tekken. It's been his whole career, and when he sees something that he doesn't like, it might come across to people that he's being toxic. But having watched I was subscribed to Main Man when he was just doing those combo videos on like Tekken 4 or 5 or something, like way back before he even showed his face. And so I can see how passionate he is about Tekken and how much he loves it. And I think when you're passionate about something, even if it is a video game and that might seem trivial to some people, it's his whole life. Like he's 37 years old now. So the way he puts it across comes across like he's either talking down to people or he's he's like his shit floats above ours. But I don't think he's trying to be like that. I just think he loves the game so much that when he sees something he doesn't like, he might explode. So I've always liked Main Man. I've met him in real life before. I don't know if he'll remember, but we were at Lions Den, which was hosted by Ozzy the Lionel, and I met him then. He's such a chill dude, like really really nice. I think when you're online and you're talking about things like this, and this goes for me as well. Sometimes people take it the wrong way and they think that you're pompous or you're arrogant. I just think he's super passionate about it.
I don't have any problems with any of his personality. I think he's very funny. I think he's super entertaining. That's not my criticism.
Mm.
I would never criticize somebody, as being pompous. I know what I've done in the past. Tom was there. Like I would never like. I'm no angel. I'm no saint. People know me. Especially in the early days, I was essentially a prick. That he can talk down to anybody he wants. I really don't care about that. What I care about is spreading certain agendas as far as like I'm a big and I know Tom. I'm gonna let him chip in here as well. You guys, you tell me which game I'm passionate about. You tell me I love Tekken, right? Because my mood immediately switched on this topic.
Yeah.
I don't care about MK1 as much because I'm in the same boat as Mike. I think the game. I don't care about buffs or nerfs. I think the game is just whatever to me, right? And Mike, I watched your video a long time ago. You essentially said the same thing, right? So that's like what. But Tekken, I actually care about the game because I think it's a good game, and even if I'm not necessarily competing anymore, it still means something to me because it was my original fighting game. But again, just to reiterate, I have no problem with Main Man Sui's personality. He can say whatever he wants. My problem is it's all the videos. They're like always the same thing. And I'm a huge buffs over nerfs guy. I'm super passionate about that no matter what game I play. And he's essentially just crying nonstop. And I feel like that's the type of attitude that Tekken 7's last patch, for example, you have Devil Jim went from like top 5 to like bottom. Dragon was nerfed up the ass. Which other, Lydia, Fakuram, etc., etc. Like, how does that make the game better? Like, then he goes on and says,
Well,
"Yo, it's still fun." How's the character fun? Like, that's not fun.
I think making the game better is going to be subjective depending on who's saying it. Like, I have my takes on what I think is silly. There's characters that I think are ridiculous in the game that aren't necessarily top tier. And so, if I had 300,000 subscribers as well, people might say that I'm trying to push an agenda and I'm just trying to get my character over. I think that I don't think he's trying to push an agenda. I just think he's saying what he believes, much like Frame Whisperer and myself. I think with Main Man though is that his platform is so large in the Tekken scene that the microscope is on him. But I'm not a believer of you should neuter what you want to say online if you truly believe it just because you have a big following. I mean, sometimes you'll say stuff that will get you in trouble, and that's you got to be accountable for that. But I would always encourage Main Man, you, whoever it is, no matter how big or small your subscriber base is, that if you truly believe this about Feng or Dragonov or Lars, whoever it is, then you should say it and the community can push back. And if you get your way, you get your way. It is what it is. I wouldn't get pressed by it. In my mind, it's like, okay, well, I guess I just have to make my subscriber count that big to have it my way. But some people feel like he's pushing his weight around or he's trying to like get something over. And even if he is, I still don't have that much of a problem with it.
What do you say about this? I know you and I talk about this a lot privately. Am I on the wrong here? Am I just am I exaggerating? What do you
Everybody
think?
is right and wrong at the same time because there is no debate over who's right, who's wrong. This person said that or that, or this take or that take, because it's all the root cause of everything. Believe me, as someone who was around from the very start of competitive fighting games until now, really people mistake the annoying is the new broken. So anything that annoying will always be considered broken. Now, heat mechanic is something else. So the heat mechanic is something different than, is this character broken? Who's this? Who's that? Whatever. The funny thing is, the way the games are now, what happened was, let's take a game like Tekken. Tekken is, it's a 3D game, so you got lows, overheads, things combo, it can be devastating damage at times. So they wanted the defensive options to be really strong. The problem is, as gaming gaming was not always as casual, simply because the root of fighting gaming was rooted in the arcade scene. meaning you had to travel there and then spend your money to play it. Things casual players don't do. They would wait till it came home on the console era, right? So the casual players didn't have as much input because they didn't have access to high-level competition, and they certainly weren't going to pay to play their games to level up. So fighting games were evolving, and as gaming became online, it still didn't become super competitive yet. You know, the tournament scene was still starting to really build to what it is today. It was on its way there. But as fighting games became online, what happened is then you got to clash the casual with the competitive. See, there was a book written one time by David Serlin, which if you read it today, it sounds like, oh, you just want the broke stuff. But basically, this book was called Playing to Win. And what it said was, if you take the high-level players, they use the cheap stuff, they know how to abuse it on each other, they know how to stop each other from abusing it. And they deal with it. You take the casuals, which he kind of worded as the scrubs, they play what's fun to them, what's not annoying to them. When they meet each other, the casuals will get absolutely massacred by the high-level players, trying the exact same cheap BS. So it shows that the cheaper the game is, the more it favors the high-level player over the casual. The casual actually has less of a chance to compete because they are more likely to establish their own unwritten rules, one and done. Oh, I don't want to fight that. But they're only holding themselves back. And this was never addressed and never changed in fighting games because the two never really clashed. The hardcore players had their arena and the casuals had their. But when gaming started to be online, everything really began to change. And I remember this. I never heard a casual ever complain about offense, but casuals would complain all the time. That all you gonna do? You gonna stand there? Fight me, pussy. Do you get pussy? Come fight me, bitch. Come. That's all you heard over and over and over and over again. Believe me, the casual audience whined worse than any. People say, oh, you guys complain now. The biggest complainers of all time are the casual audience. And they complained and they complained, but social media still wasn't there yet. So they couldn't get their voice out as much. And then social media became bigger. Developers had a larger scope. They were able to hear what people were saying, what they were annoyed about. Tekken is a microcosm of that. Tekken 6, for all people might think about it today, Tekken 6 exploded. You had shows like Tekken Crash, MLG. Tekken 6 was on fire. You had your own pro league. MLGs for Tekkens were extremely hype. Koreans coming over here all the time. Tekken Crash was extremely hype. People tuned in to watch it all the time, all around the world. But the casual audience, backdash, sidestep. I remember Help Me when he came over. He lived with us for like 30 days, 45 days. Him, Sane, JDCR, they were like, even when we get hit, we don't care. Sidestep anyway. And it wasn't that it was broken, because if I was getting hit, or not even me, but someone else who maybe not as good as them, it doesn't even have to be someone like at a moderate level. It could be at even lower level. We couldn't just get hit and sidestep and move around like they do. They knew when to do it and when not to do it. So to some people, it's like, this is all they do. Sidestep around, backdash all day. It's too broken. Nerf it. So they, in Tekken, then Tag 2 was basically Tekken 6 with two characters. Huge damage, etc. because you had tag combos. Tekken 7 comes out and, they severely neutered the sidestep. The backdash was still toned down a little bit, and then as they began to change the game, the backdash got better and they introduced new mechanics, etc. But overall, people still were like, too much defense, Arslan ass, backdashing all day, backdash. So what did Namco do? Namco didn't themselves decide, man, this guy Arslan ass backdashing all day. People said it, and enough people said it to where it was heard, and they said, okay, I got it. Run away, defense, blah, blah, blah. And then as they give you more offensive tools, they, over the years, and it's not just from Tekken from 7 to 8, it's a microcosm of game to game, start to tone the defensive tools while simultaneously buffing the offensive tools. It was never buff the offensive tools to be as strong as the defensive tools. It was nerf the defensive tools and then buff the offensive tools. And then we have Tekken 8, where they want you to not backdash but sidestep around, but then the offense is such that you can't sidestep around moves you should be able to sidestep around. They somehow track. And then you factor in the heat mechanic, which says, hey, all these situations that these players could stay out of, now they can stay out of it. They don't even have an option but to guess, and then your risk is small, their risk is great. They can't get away from it. They just have to hold it. Oh, by the way, we're also keeping things like rage drive, rage in general. So then when you factor in heat, plus rage, plus everything else, it's like guy gets in heat, he's in rage, so the combos even do more damage. Ends with rage with rage art, and then done. GG's. And it's like it's a perfect evolution of the way things were. And you had a lot of people even today complaining about heat are the very same people who were like backdash, Arslan Ash, backdash. People at the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
And one of them being main man.
It doesn't matter who it is. Could be main man. It could be anyone else. People, and the problem is developers don't realize this, and this is why I say social media is the worst thing to ever happen. People are simultaneously okay with everything while okay with nothing. They don't want someone like Arslan Ash doing backdash. They don't appreciate his defense. They don't appreciate his patience, needs defense, his patience, etc. because it's too hard to get them in their offensive situation. But then Tekken gives you this, and these very same people are going online, and now they're caught in these situations with heat, and now they're like, cry foul. This guy could never beat me before. I was always able to get away from him. But the problem is you didn't want Arslan Ash to get away from you, but you wanted to get away from this guy. Now, Arslan can't get away from you, but you can't get away from this guy who you say you were beating all the time in Tekken 7, and now you want to throw your hands up and say, this is ridiculous. It should be toned down. It should be fixed. It is just the way gaming is. And now annoying has become the new broken. Period. You can't have too much offense. You can't have too much defense. You can't have too much. Now fighting games are in a place where there's no right direction to go. That's just fighting games now. I
think Street Fighter 6 found a pretty healthy balance.
They did, because Street Fighter seems to be like, yeah, I know you guys don't like
People complain about that as well. Remember initially how people, when they still do, right, about the drive rush. But Tom touched on something, and that's so important here, articulated better than I ever could. I'm not doubting whether main man Sui or Frame Whisperer or even Mike Howell, I'm not doubting their skill as a player. But sometimes I think knowing history is just as important as being skilled. And Tom just told you why. Tekken traditionally has always been a very defensive game. In fact, the most broken characters in Tekken history, almost all of them were defensive. I'm talking about like when Steve's quick hook literally had no recovery. When he double jab was a special mid-hitting move. When Steve had essentially an infinite combo when he hit you from the side. All that stuff is defensive. That's not offensive. So now Namco for the first time said, you know what? Let's make the game more offensive. And they were telling you a year and a half before the game was even released that yes, the game was going to be more offensive. So what's the point of making video after video after video after video after video complaining about that when the same person complained about defense in a previous game? That to me is hypocrisy, and it kind of goes along with Thomas saying. So
see it as hypocrisy. I think that after Tekken 5, Tekken took a turn, and it never really went back to what we knew it. With obviously Tekken 6 introduced Rage, Tekken Tag expanded on it, and then Tekken 7 brought in a bunch of new mechanics. Now I've got these ones in 8. And I don't think any of the arguments against those games are invalid. I think that Tekken at its core still exists. Like the Tekken that we knew from 5 is still there, but they've added so much stuff on it that I don't think that these people are wrong in pointing out that Tekken's a very special game where you don't have to tweak too much because it's already really, really good. There's nothing wrong with adding mechanics, but I think it's very clear to see the heat mechanic is a hot mess right now. A lot of people have issues with it. The biggest issue with the heat mechanic, if we're just going to talk about Tekken 8 quickly, is that it takes away options from people. Rather than allowing people to do more. It actually locks people in place, and so that's where the frustration comes from. I don't think it's broken, but I do think it's annoying. It's annoying when I'm fighting somebody online, I'm playing Tekken, and then suddenly they've popped heat and I can't move now. I literally can't move because their Bengwei's shoulder, for example, has become a launcher. And it's like, that's ridiculous. It's stupid. I think change is okay, but not all change is good. So it's good to have big voices saying, look, you've added and you've added and you've added, and we've continuously said that we don't like this, we don't like it. And I think Tekken 7 kind of found a sweet spot. They added stuff. The rage wasn't as bad as Tekken 6 or Tekken Tag 2. There was new mechanics in the game that definitely needed refining that Tekken 8 actually fixed. For example, the armored launchers. I think those were so stupid, and Tekken 8 fixed them. Tekken 8 did a lot of things that are really good, but the dumping of the heat mechanic on top of everything did really just send everything into overdrive. And yeah, they did tell us a year out that it's going to be more offensive. But to be fair to the community, when we saw it and we tested it out and we got to play the game and people saw the token system, people were up in arms. And to me, it looked like Harada and Michael Murray were listening because they nerfed it. And then they nerfed it again. It got nerfed 5 times before it came out. And so we're in year 1. We're in the arcade phase, so to speak, of Tekken 8. I think people should be saying, look, it still needs, not necessarily nerfs, it needs refinement. There's things that are really, really silly in Heat. There's some things that do insane chip. We were watching a Tekken World Tour match the other day, and Panda had not hit the other guy yet, and he'd lost half his health. And I was like, come on, man, this isn't Tekken. This is ridiculous. I feel like I'm watching King of Fighters or something. So I don't think people are wrong to be making videos to point out, because we're going to have this game for 8 years now. So someone should say something.
But the same people who were quote unquote annoyed by Tekken's offense were also annoyed by the fact that Zafina had a better backdash than everybody else, and then Alyssa had a better backdash, and then Lily had the best sidestep. So if these people were actually consistent, I would respect that, but they're not. That's my
isn't
problem.
that a bit different though? Because they're arguing specific characters rather than system overhauls. I don't
Well,
think
yeah,
those
and I
two things
know
are the
they
same.
love nerfs, but I'm not the type of guy. I mean, again, nerfs. I think nerfs make a game generally boring. That doesn't mean some stuff should not be nerfed. Obviously, like Azucena's running 3-2, that was just absolutely ridiculous move. When like one player did it like 10 times in a row and you can't move, right? That's of course, obviously, it needs to be nerfed, right? And I'm not like no nerfs ever. That's a very primitive and I think juvenile perspective. But it's like at the same time, I don't want a character to whether I use him or not. It's a completely different story. Like Devil Jin, for example, in Tekken 7, I would argue very difficult to use. Was top tier until the very last patch. Why is he being bumped from like top 5, whatever, top 10 to like bottom 5, which is where Knee and many other players have him? It's because of people like Main Man Sui, because all he did was complain about Devil Jin's damage. And I was like, yeah, you want to nerf? Here you go. Ready? Happy now?
It's not because of Main Man Sui. It's because of just where gaming is when they mix the casual audience. The
casual audience doesn't know.
Hold on, time out. Put it this way: if they merged somehow the competitive NBA audience with the casual, there would still be people that complain that it's not fair. LeBron James is too big and too strong. I mean, at the end of the day, you cannot mix competitive and casuals. The pros have their arena, and the casuals don't enter it. And the casuals have their own arena, right? In fighting games, they share the same arena. And this is the problem. And there's no way to fix it. And for a long time,
trial and error.
It's trial and error. And I don't think there's a happy medium, because the problem is the non-pro player will always, the non-competitive player, and people nowadays, competitive would be like on the blacktop, a really good basketball player on the blacktop thinks he's a competitive basketball player. You're shit. If you go to the NBA, you'd be less than the worst player. You're great for where you are, but the truth is, you're shit. You would lose to Brian Scalabrine in a 3-on-1, and you would have 2 of your friends, and he would still beat you. So, and he was considered one of the worst players ever in the NBA, and he tells people, I'm closer to LeBron James than you are to me. And these people would be considered very good basketball players on the blacktop. The truth is, they're absolutely garbage. And in gaming, those people wanted to feel like the. And now, look, a lot of people use an extreme example. What are you trying to say? That people like Sonic Fox, Ninja Killer, or this guy, they couldn't be good? No. There are plenty of people that are just extremely good, extremely talented, extremely dedicated, true pro players by any era, any game, etc. However, there are a lot of people who just didn't like the way gaming was. And I'm not, over the years, it's like when the casual audience and the competitive audience mixed, well, the casual audience, what used to be, like in a book that is totally outdated now and no longer relevant for the modern time, it's like, playing to win. It was built on, well, the casuals have their own audience, the pros have theirs. The casuals, they don't want to deal with the annoying stuff or the quote unquote cheap stuff. But there was no one to cry to. There was no way to change it. There was no way to fix it. It only seemed to be broken when it was done on them. And it was never broken when they did it to the top players. You see what I'm saying? And now we have a situation like if you look at Tekken, it was a perfect example of this. You have people who thought Tekken 7 was too defensive. They made it more offensive because they wanted more offense. And now it's too offensive and they want defense back again. It's just one of those things where people are okay with everything as long as they do it to you. They are not okay with it if you do it to them. And it's not just in Tekken, it's in every single game. You can go online and play MK1 right now. I'm a very lame player with Sub-Zero. I can fight somebody playing Sindel and whatever, trying to zone me out, or Sindel Sub-Zero, trying to run away, zone me out, etc. Or Katana, whatever. And if I still beat them by staying away from them, then whatever, then they want to quit and complain, or if they win one game, they'll teabag because how dare you play like this? Even though they come online to do the same thing and they'll message me like, I don't come online to do this. No, you come online to do it to other people, but you do not come online for it to be done back to you. And this is the problem that can never be solved, but developers still try to solve it. At the end of the day, the number one problem is 99.9% of the player base. And even if I say 0.1 is still like 1 million people, or 500,000 people. That's still a ton of people. So even though I'm saying 99.9, that 0.1 is still a large audience, which is the competitive audience, I guess. But 99.9% of people only say, I want to do it to you, and I'm okay with that. I do not want for you to do it to me. They're okay if they're rushing you down all day, not if you do it to them. They're okay if they're running away from you, not if you're running away from them. In other games, they're okay zoning you out. They're not okay with you zoning them out. They're okay grappling with you. They're not okay with you grappling them. That is the issue that developers have been struggling with. Even Rage. Well, okay.
Tom, that's not
comeback mechanics. Who do you think argued for a comeback mechanic? The pro players? The pro players were saying, hey, if I'm up 90%, this guy should have a way to come back on me. I assure you, no top player ever said that. That was put in there to make the lesser player feel that they still have a chance. That is the core. No pro player has ever said, I really get out of bed in the morning because I want to be up 80% for $100,000 and have my guy kill me in one combo. Nobody has ever said that at the highest possible level. The gaming has been trying to solve fighting games anyway, an unsolvable problem. The guys, the people, the women, whoever it is, the people. I got to be PC. We know it is what it is. Social media. And I don't want to insult anybody. I'm an old man, guys, so bear with me. The people that say, I want to do it to you. I do not want you to do it to me. That is the audience that is what fighting games are trying to bridge. And it's impossible. It's impossible to do. It can't be done.
But if we had like Tekken content creators, and I think we do have one in here, who actually spoke the truth. See, those people who think like that, they don't need representation necessarily, because they are the vast majority. Why should they be justified in what they believe in? think consistency is super important, and I don't think something. I think Ling in Tekken is incredibly annoying. I want to shoot myself, but I don't think she should be nerfed. Do you know why? Because I'm consistent. Because I know I have my own bullshit that I'm going to abuse on her, but she has her own bullshit that she will. I know that's like the old school perspective, right, Tom? But I stick to that to this day. So that's why I'm, like I'm just appalled when I see like a mid tier, quote unquote, being annoying. So we have to call the mid tier AIDS, toxic, cancerous. Like, what is this language? This is insanity. So what?
Annoying
So
is considered broken. Again, there's no. You can go
I
back and
know,
forth
but
with all you want. There's
that's
no
why
fix. There's no fix.
I know there isn't, but then
Ninety-nine
people
point
should
nine
talk like
percent of
you do,
people. Again,
and then they should mention that on their
I
their.
do think there probably is a fix for these things. I think that are you guys familiar with the Dark Souls series?
I am.
Those games are insanely difficult, right? They're known for their difficulty, and yet they're beloved by millions. And they figured out how to get casuals to want to lock in and learn to play those games and explore them. I don't know what the actual fix is for fighting games, but I don't think it's impossible to fix it. I think that sometimes developers need to just stand on business and not kowtow to what people are saying. But I think that because the casual player base is so large, I don't think there's anything wrong listening to them. But I do think that they shouldn't be so quick to implement things that are going to annoy people. I think annoyance is a really big reason. For example, that a lot of like tournament players don't show up for Mortal Kombat because the game is so frustrating to play. I think that obviously calling something broken that is annoying is silly, but I think a good like healthy medium is that a combat mechanic, I understand the logic behind it. And I don't get too annoyed when they implement combat
Nor do
mechanics.
I. I don't either. Yeah.
Yeah, it's how they go about implementing it. And then when the implementations like Rage, for example, let's say that people are making videos about the Rage system in Tekken and the super moves. I think it's good to like look at it and be like, okay, you've implemented this thing for the casuals. I hear it. I understand why. However, this is what we can do so we can meet in the middle. So they can still have their combat mechanic, but if they like, for example, waste it or whatever, I get to punish them or whatever it might be, just as an example. So I think it's good to listen to the casual players because at the end of the day, without them, they're not going to make our fighting games anymore. Right? They're the lifeblood of the games most of the times. So I think it's okay to listen to them and just try to find a middle ground. And unfortunately, in the pursuit of finding a middle ground, there's going to be arguments and pushback. But I don't think anybody should be quiet with their opinions, and that goes for casual players as well. Because I get a lot of comments from casual players saying you pro players should shut the fuck up. We don't want to hear from you. But I don't feel like that towards them. I do want to hear from the casual players because I'm not a pro player, but I hang around with I've hung around with pro players before, and I try to play to a higher level. But I also like playing games casually as well, so I understand where they're coming from a lot of the time when they hear me or whoever it might be suggesting things, and they're like, "Shut up, go play Tekken 7." I don't ever get angry when people say that because I know what they're trying to say to me. They're just not saying it in the most polite way. So I think there is a healthy medium. It's just right now, especially right now, the FGC seems a little bit nuclear, and people can't seem to like politely talk to each other.
Well, let me ask you a couple of questions, and I do want to wrap it up because I want to be respectful of both of your times because I know you're overseas. Um,
I'm okay for now. I don't have to leave the house
okay,
for another
okay,
4 hours.
okay. Sounds. I. This is probably where my biggest disagreements come. Nothing to do with the content creators that with whom I disagree vehemently. You made a video, the fatigue video,
Yeah,
which I take issues with. So we talked about the Tekken community is sometimes divided.
yeah.
Yet when you look at the numbers, because I know you're a big numbers guy, Combo Breaker, I believe Tekken 8, what was it like 1600 or more?
I think it was the
Um,
highest.
yeah, it was the highest. DreamHack also, I believe, had 100 or 50 to 100 more than Street Fighter did. And then the tournament in Melbourne in Australia, also Tekken 8 had the highest. So
Yeah,
even though there's division, I don't know what you mean by fatigue. Tekken 8 is getting the numbers. Even though people claim some people they don't like the game, they're still showing up. And as
yeah,
Tom has said in the past, not all of them are high level players, right? Like Street Fighter got 7,000. Like how many of them were actually like competent, right? Like at the game. Lord knows how many, right? Not that many,
yeah.
I would assume. So So the game is still very well received, despite the negativity. Not again your negativity, but overall
Yeah.
that comes from a lot of these content creators. So what do you mean by fatigue?
So what I mean by fatigue, I'll try to use another example to explain it. The same way that you would get gym fatigue, the only way that you get that fatigue is by going to the gym, right? So I when I say fatigue with Tekken, I'm not saying that people are not playing it. I'm saying people are playing it and they're getting frustrated with the system. And the reason they're playing it is because it is still Tekken at its core. Like there's something to love there. I would not have woken up this morning and played it before gym if I didn't still love the game. But you can love something and still have gripes with it. And I think the fatigue part comes from the way they've set up the rank system. For one, makes no sense. I know people have tried to like make sense of it, but it makes no sense when you have a casual mode that does what the rank system should be doing, in my opinion. And the fatigue comes from the fact that the game is so fast paced and you're constantly being thrown into new matches, sometimes quicker than what you should be because people won and done a lot, which is still happening a lot. It happened to me like 10 times
And by the
today.
way, you're one of the few people who talks about that, which is an absolute travesty. And I think I know why. Because the other players, they actually like the first two one. That goes, they find something annoying. No, don't want to play that again. What I want to lose. I want to be I want to be one and done.
Yeah.
Do you think that's literally their perspective? Don't you agree?
Yeah, well, the problem is that the reason that people want and done is because they're trying to protect their image and their points. People are chasing the rank rather than chasing getting better, and nobody's obligated to get better. You can play Tekken and just chase ranks. I'm only voicing from my opinion because I like locking into a set with somebody and playing for a long time. And then for me, Tekken is an endurance game. It's not the kind of game that really makes sense to play in two matches. I understand why they do it in tournament for timekeeping reasons, but when you're playing somebody in Tekken to figure out who's better, it's not like Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter where there's like 6 moves per character and there's only so many systems. Tekken is so complex and big as a game that it's hard to know in 2 or 3 games who's the better player. So I think the fatigue for me is knowing that I can't run into Dragunov player in Russia and a completely random play style, and I get to find out if I'm better than this guy. He's either gonna one and done me, or I'm gonna beat him in 2 games, and I'm on to the next. And it's just, and the game is so fast paced, and it's throwing you constantly into new matchups, and it's also quite mashy compared to other Tekkens. And then you have the heat mechanic that's a bit like, okay, I'm done. I can't play this anymore. Whereas in other Tekken games, you could lock into a set, get to learn about your opponent, learn so much about that specific playstyle, and be like, okay, I've walked away from this, potentially made a friend on ranks that I never would have made, which happened to me a lot on Tekken 7. I did a lot of people that I still have on my friends list. And then you move on to the next and you play a long set with them. And a lot of people are like, oh, we can't bring back death matches because of boosting. But there's a very easy way to fix that, and that's just don't award players so many points per game. That you can come up with a system. I know it might take them more than a minute to put it together, but you can come up with a system where you cap how many points can be earned, but the player's not kicked out of the room. If I want to sit here and fight them, then I can sit here and fight them. But Tekken 8 doesn't have that. So again, fatigue is, to me, I look at it the same way that I'd look at when I'm doing a competition that is really grueling, like Tough Mudder. I want to be there because I like competing. I like getting physical, and those are the things I'm into outside of gaming. But it's difficult when you start to add so many stipulations to not be mentally fatigued, rather than just like having it the way it was before. Because the way it worked before, well, the way it was before, worked. That's what I mean when I say fatigue.
I mean, just if I may interject and say, no, I 100% agree with you, and I like your video that you made a long time ago about how initially they refused to punish the pluggers or whatever.
Yeah,
That to me is the real, like that's the way they actually appease the casual audience more than oh, they had this heat mechanic and now scrubs have a chance to win. I don't think so at all. You will always be better than the scrub because you are the better player. But when they refuse to punish them for some ridiculous reasons that they named, I don't know, something about banning and laws. I don't even know, but
yeah, it's a load of
uh,
BS.
it was just a BS because we know why they didn't want to ban them because they want that they want them to keep playing so they can use the Tekken shop, they can make more money, etc.,
Yeah,
etc. That is the best example of them catering to the casual audience in a way that hurts everybody. I think the heat stuff could use some adjustments. I think it can, uh,
mm,
but again, That's one thing they didn't lie to you about. That's one thing that they were consistent. They told you a year in it's going to be very offensive, unlike any other Tekken. So I'm not saying
But
people should.
to
Go
be
ahead.
fair,
I'm sorry.
we didn't make any qualms about it. Everyone was very clear in saying we don't like this even before the game came out. I remember seeing loads of videos of when they showed us the heat mechanic. I think the first character they showed us was Paul, and he did two death fists. Everyone went, "What the hell
Oh
is
yeah,
going on?"
I remember. Yeah, I know what
Yeah,
you're
so it
talking
was on
about.
both sides. They never lied, but we were never shy about it. And even when the game came out, the heat mechanic has changed since the closed network test and the closed beta test, and we were like, no, this is not. This heat mechanic's ridiculous. So they have brought it down. So there has been like a tug of war situation. But what you were saying just now with the banning and the rage quitters, that also adds to the fatigue because not only are you throwing me into several games really quickly, which is alien to Tekken players, you're also not punishing the people that are making that situation even worse. And then you're giving me a BS reason. And I didn't even want them to ban people. I said, I don't care if you ban people. That's up to you. Just give me my points so my time is not wasted. If I'm sitting here playing your game and I'm playing a ranked mode, the objective is to gain points and rank up, and you're making my life difficult now. Obviously, it's a first world problem. I'll turn the game off and go about my business. But for the purposes of the discussion, I'm playing your game, so give me my points. And I can completely understand why players are like, all right, I've had enough. Like this is too much. And why the argument that I got from some people was you're getting old, Mike, because you're 32. And I was like, I was playing Tekken 7 6 months ago before this game came out. The day before I got Tekken 8, I was playing Tekken 7. I didn't feel this way. I did not suddenly become old overnight, you know? So that argument is BS to me.
Well, I agree, and again, that's why I keep watching your videos where a lot of the other Tekken content creators, I generally don't because I already know what they're gonna say. I'm not impressed by their content. Whether I disagree with them or not is different, right? I just disagree with you, right? Yet I still keep watching your content because I
Yeah.
believe you're consistent. That's all I ask for. My problem is with what you're saying is not like not your videos, but like your justification. Mike, these people are going to complain no matter what. Like, you really think if the game becomes more defensive, they will be happy? Well, maybe Oz and Nash will be happy because he actually makes money, and he will probably win more. But
Mm.
the average Fujin rank player, they're just going to complain. And then you're going to have content creators, not you, justify their complaining. It's like, yeah, you're losing because now defense is strong and now they're sidestepping your throws and they're doing 50% of your life. And that's the reason why you're losing. I've seen this before. I've been playing Tekken almost since I was like 5 or 10. Well, obviously not competitively at that age, but it's like I've seen all these arguments before, and these
Yeah.
people are not consistent. Like Tom said, whatever's annoying to them, they will complain about, and whatever the meta is, they will complain about. So at that point, I'm like, you guys probably shouldn't be playing fighting games. Go play poker or something.
I think when I construct my videos, I'm not really thinking about like individual players complaining. I'm looking at the situation. Like for example, I'll use Tekken 7 as an example. Horang had I think it was backslash or backlash, whatever that move was called,
Yeah,
where
yeah,
he'd
yeah.
armor up and then you'd get launched. At that point, to me, it was irrelevant what the Horang players were saying. I was looking at the situation and looking how Horang could apply it, and then saying, is this fair or not? In my opinion, it wasn't, and it's very clear when Tekken 8 came out, they got rid of that. He can do a follow up now, and there's no combo from it. So yeah, they're gonna complain. The Horang players might be like, oh, they nerf my characters, but I'm not really interested in that because I don't look at things. I try not to. Obviously, I make mistakes, but I try to not look at them subjectively. I try to look at it objectively. Like I'll use my character as an example. If Feng Wei is doing something in the game that is absurd, I will advocate for it to be taken out of the game. I don't really care if the Feng Wei players are complaining about it. It doesn't really make it. It doesn't make a difference to me. The objective of my videos is for the entire game to get better, even at the expense of the characters I'm playing or my playstyle. In my opinion, Tekken 8 has lent too far into the offense, regardless of whether people are complaining about defense in Tekken 7. And I think that it needs to be adjusted. I don't think there's anything wrong with like trying to look at it like as a whole, removing the voices of people that are going to complain anyway. Because it doesn't matter what you say, someone is going to complain at you, and it doesn't matter what you do, someone will complain. But it doesn't mean you don't look at the issue at hand and be like, okay, Dragunov, for example, his whatever the notation is for that kick where he kicks you in the knees, everyone could kind of agree that move was ridiculous and they nerfed it. It doesn't matter what the Dragunov players say, the move was just stupid. And so that's how I try to look at things.
Well, let me ask you this question. This is actually from Amplify Shots from Test Your Might because I told him I was going to have a conversation with you and obviously Tom.
Yeah.
He asks, What do you think MK could learn from Tekken?
What do I think Mortal Kombat could learn from Tekken?
I mean, not necessarily the game, but maybe even, the developers or whatever, whoever else. The way answer the question, how were you, see
Um,
fit?
well, I mean, I wouldn't go down the gameplay route, the actual core gameplay, because I know some people will be like, oh, you want to make Mortal Kombat like Tekken. So in terms of like the franchise as a whole, Tekken does a lot of good things in terms of quality of life, and there's very basic things that Mortal Kombat could do to make people happy. For example, the jukebox in Tekken is such a massive deal. Like if they removed it, you would really hear people crying about it. So and you can see Street Fighters copying Tekken now, right? They're bringing in their own jukebox. That's something that Mortal Kombat could do because one of the things that people criticize Mortal Kombat for is its dog shit music, which never used to be the case. MK used to have really sick music, so that's one thing they could do. They could also and maybe this is just me, but the abundance of guest characters is insane to me. I don't know if it's like really good for business or not, but whenever I talk to Mortal Kombat characters, they're always like our character's always missing, and we've got Omni Man and all these guys. Like, why are these guys in the game when Noob Saibot, for example, is not in the game or whoever? So I think maybe like focusing on their core their core roster should probably be something they should do going forward. I think that the developers need to look at the things that they did well in the past. Their previous crypts, I think the crypt that they put in Mortal Kombat 11, there was definitely something they could have done with that and gone a bit further. Invasions is one of the biggest jokes I've ever seen in my life. I don't know who greenlit that over at NRS, but whoever it was, they need to go on probation or something. That is ridiculous. I could have come up with something better in my sleep. So I think what Tekken does really well is Tekken takes what came before it and expands upon it. In my opinion, there's obviously things they've messed up on. There's no team battle, there's no survival mode, any of that. But there's a lot of things that Tekken takes from its past and expands upon it. And just if I was to say something about gameplay, they need to start building some sort of legacy. Every single you can bring in a new gimmick because Tekken has the heat mechanic and Street Fighter's got drive. You can bring in a new gimmick system that's going to be around for one game. I haven't got a problem with that. But the core characters, they need to start building on them because every game I'm playing a different character. And I think fighting game players like me and Tom were talking about, when Eddie was getting dropped in Tekken, we all knew, everyone was like, I wonder what John Ding's Eddie's going to look like. Or Sagat in Street Fighter, everyone thinks of Bonchan or Akuma Takedo. Or in Tekken, Main Man, like you'll think of Kazuya. I think Mortal Kombat really need to focus on archetypes. They need to bring archetypes back. More so, they should have done an MK1 because of the cameo system. The cameo system is a mess all over the place. You've got cameos doing the same thing, but one of them does it better than the rest. So why am I going to pick this one if I can just pick that one? They should have had Goro as a pure grappler, and then I don't know, Sub-Zero is somebody that slows the game down because he's a nice character and he freezes you or whatever. But it just looks like they don't seem to have a clear direction. They kind of just throw shit at the wall and see what sticks.
Man, if I hope they listen to this, and especially the last couple of talking points, but that would be incredible because it's something that Tom and I've been preaching for years, only for it to fall on deaf ears. Lord knows how many times.
It will fall on deaf ears though, because at the end of the day, if we look at the sales of Mortal Kombat 1, they're doing really well. I don't
They
know if
are.
NRS or Warner Brothers particularly care about player retention when the microtransactions are through the roof and the sales are doing well. So the only way that our voices or the voices of the people that are angry with Mortal Kombat are ever going to be heard is if the game tanks, because we've seen what happens when movies don't do well or games don't do well. The people come out and say, okay, we need to fix this up. Prime example of it is Sonic. Do you guys remember that Sonic trailer? Everybody ripped Sonic to shreds to the point the producer said, yeah, we're going to fix it. And then they re-released the trailer. If nobody said anything, there was no crying about it, that we would have had crackhead Sonic on the cinema screens.
Well, let me ask one last question to Tom, and then wrap it up because I want to have some lunch. I was also in the gym this morning. Tom, this one is for you. This is also fun from Amplified Shots. What do you think about the future of esports as it relates to fighting games? Is it on the rise or the decline?
Wow, that's a good one. The future of esports as related to fighting games. The future of esports is Well, really, first I'll address it in Street Fighter and Tekken because it's different from Mortal Kombat. So in general, first I'll go in general. In general, in esports, the problem is it is very difficult to do because fighting games are not. So all the biggest tournaments are generally in the West, but the Western audience, in as far as like in the countries in the West, gaming is not revered like it is everywhere else. A great example is in America, got some guy who will pay for courtside like they can pack. Rick Fox got involved in gaming because he went to a League of Legends thing and they packed the Staples Center. So of course, a businessman, he's like, well, fighting games are untapped. It's an untapped resource here. Get it on the ground floor, man. Then he realized they couldn't even fill up the first row of the Staples Center. So the fighting games in America, the guy that will pay for courtside seats to watch the Lakers, he looks at gaming in the Western countries as, I know I don't belong on the court with LeBron James. I don't belong on the field with Ndamukong Kung Su or Aaron Donald. I don't want to get hit. I don't belong on in these arenas, right? But gaming, I could do that. The only reason why you're even good is because I work and you don't. So it's seen as not a skill by the majority of this audience. Now that will eventually turn over as everyone who lives younger now inherits their parents' money and has their own kind of career, etc. But gaming is very, very slowly, fighting games at evolution moving, because for some reason other games seem to be able to get that audience. But fighting games are at the very bottom of that. So I think esports has a good future. Fighting game esports, maybe not. Fighting games are also too segregated, meaning if you watch, people that play shooters tend to watch and play other shooters. People that, like, even ARPGs, if you play WoW, you might play Diablo 4, you might play Last Epoch, really watch them all. Fighting games, Street Fighter players don't watch MK not Street Fighter, half of them don't watch Tekken. A lot of the audiences are separated. So you take the smallest of all gaming audiences, competitive-wise, and then split them 6 ways. Very difficult. So you have a very, very, very few people that can make a living off content and also being competitive. Main man is not a competitor. He's a content creator, right? Very rarely do you have them both. So for esports, it's tough to make money as a content creator and as being a top tournament player. That opportunity is not out there for as many people as people may think. And as far as money goes in winnings are grossly uneven. You get $1 million for winning the Capcom Cup. Think about this. People like, look who's just won $1 million. For one, gamers are not educated on business. I don't want to know what he won. I want to know what he take him off their taxes. And does he have his own LLC? Did he write that off? Is he paying taxes at all if he's smart? He shouldn't pay any taxes if he's smart. What can you do to write off $1 million worth of, obviously there's gift tax, etc. But if you're your own business and it's paid to your LLC, things are differently. Gamers don't even understand business. So the fact that most gamers have no idea about business tells me esports is in a really bad place for gaming, because you think if it was a big business for people and all this opportunity, that would be common knowledge. 2, who was the newest millionaire? If you won the very next big combo breaker, did you win $1 million? Did you win $100,000? No. The problem is, from one tournament to the next, the drop-off is so massive that you could literally go to the next tournament and they could all be there. Daigo, Tokido, every known Capcom name. And if you win that tournament, you get a couple of grand. If you won the tournament the month prior, you got $1 million. How can you exist? In fighting games, You have to win one. This illusion that the young players do put out there as play for money, do this, do that. There's no money in fighting games. You have to win. As far as winning, you have to win one tournament. And if you don't win that tournament, you make about as much as a 15-year-old in McDonald's in New York. That's right around, maybe, 35,000, something like that, whatever it is, $30,000 actually. And that's, you have to win your main tournament. Now, people that have sponsorships, paid salary, how many people are like that in fighting games overall? How many people in fighting games as a competitor are on pro teams and paid good salary? Less than I would care to admit. And then as a content creator, it's also very difficult because it's tough to transition from a pro player to a content creator, and content creators don't seem to translate to pros. If you're a pro player, a lot of people look at it like, well, at a certain point in generation, a lot of times look at you like, well, now you're casual. You're only beating up on casual players because you can't cut it against the pros. And if you're a casual player, you have to focus more on like the casual stuff and a lot of the main man stuff. Like, I don't begrudge what he does because this is his living. What is he supposed to do? Talk like a pro tournament player? Nobody wants that. That's not his market. He appeals to the majority of the audience, and that's how he makes his money. And I think that's just fine.
Okay, can I just say something about the main man?
Sure.
Just to add on to that, there was a really good comment left on my video from the Crystal Bloods. Someone that left a comment on my video, and it was with regards to what he said about the rank inflation. And obviously, I had a different take. So I wanted to highlight this comment because it was really, really well put together. He said that I think the main man is looking at it from a different perspective because he thinks that main man thinks Tekken 8 is harder to rank up in than Tekken 7. And I think the other. He said, you have to remember, main man lives and breathes Tekken. So in Tekken 7, where execution was much harder and defensive options were much stronger, you had to be good at fundamental Tekken to rank up and get into those higher levels. And once you reached those, you had earned it. But now look at Tekken 8, the title that is less difficult to play and heat turns your character into a machine. All these mechanics have helped lower skilled players to bridge the gap with the veterans to some extent, especially since the defensive options are weaker as well. So if you look at it from his perspective, since Tekken 7 was so much harder to play and master, his existing skill set allowed him to effortlessly outplay all of his opponents that were not nearly as skilled as he is in the game, meaning he had a much easier time to climb up the ranks and get to the top rank in Tekken 7. But now in Tekken 8, through all of the added offensive systems that pretty much anyone can use, the main man now has to work a lot harder to win his matches because everyone else that isn't necessarily on his level in terms of fundamental skill has been buffed through the system changes in 8. That is why Tekken 8 feels easier for everyone else and harder for top players like him because everyone else got pushed closer to his level by default. So I just wanted to highlight that comment because I did think it was pretty well put together, and I can understand where the frustration comes from for people like him.
Sure, but again, he's not a tournament player overall. He doesn't choose to compete. I'm not saying that he couldn't.
He's not a tournament player, but I think.
But his money is in his content, is what I mean to say.
Yeah.
In the aspect of it is like there's just not enough eyes on fighting game worldwide. You can't pack arenas for fighting games. Overall, people are not buying tickets by the droves to consistently sell out arenas. Very rarely can I say the top 50. Think about how many people buy a game. To say the top 50 players in the world, 90% of them, or not even 50% of them, the top 25 players, can make a living off fighting games. How can it possibly ever be an esport when the majority of best players in the world cannot do it? And it creates an imbalance. It's like, take any sport. Let's take tennis. Let's just say if number one in tennis won $10 million and second place won $5,000, it would create a larger gap. Now, everyone after number one has to work their 9 to 5 and then hit balls when they can. But number one's winning so much money, he now gets to practice full time. this is actually unfair competition because now he has a natural advantage because he gets to hone his craft better than yours. The reason why every pro athlete is paid so well is it creates a level of fairness. You may not have the same ability, but you can try to hone your craft as your profession because you make enough money to support a way of life. So you can go from what you are making to making significantly more and to having more success because your job is to hone your craft. In fighting games, how many people can actually say that are competitive players? Few and far between. Few and far between. NRS is a big victim of that. You have maybe 2 to 3 tournament players that are making bank off, a lot of other things and opportunities their way, and everyone else is not. And it creates a competitive disadvantage because they get to play and train nonstop, and everyone else gets to play after their 9 to 5. So fighting games are actually more imbalanced than ever because there's more opportunity for a very select handful and not for everyone else. As a byproduct, they get to hone their skills better than anyone else to make them appear to be more godlike than they really are. I'm not saying that certain people, I'm not going to say their names because people will try to act like I'm hating, are not godlike. But they are not more as godlike, they are not significantly more godlike than some of their peers. They appear to be more godlike because the majority of their peers have to work their 9 to 5 and then compete for pennies on the dollar, and they're not getting as much money anywhere near it through YouTube, through whatever. So the financial aspect is significantly gives certain players a huge advantage. Fighting games are drastically unfair when it comes to professional competition. If in the NBA, LeBron James got $100 million a year and everyone else in the NBA got maybe $10,000 a year, would he not have a competitive advantage? Would he not be even better than everyone else than he already naturally was? Gaming is no different. People don't look at money as something that can imbalance things. You just don't live on planet Earth then.
Well,
and that's why esports can't work.
Yeah, I'm not a mathematician or statistician, but if you generally believe that you can win that $1 million at the Capcom Cup, you honestly might as well just play the lottery, in my opinion. Like that, I generally believe
even
that
if you're a good player, because you don't always beat other good players.
Exactly, but here's the difference between sports and actual games. In sports, I don't know, I can't make any football references. Tom, I apologize that maybe my fellow European here, maybe I'll make some soccer references,
Sure.
but soccer doesn't change, from one quote unquote, game to another, right? It's soccer. The rules are mostly intact, right? Fighting games change all the time, not just from game to game, from patch to patch, to hotfix from hotfix. Whether you DLCs in the game or not, the character used to use, like, for example, Tokido with Akuma, 10, 20, 30 other variety of reasons, right? It's so hard. Think about how much you have to play and how much you have to be good at adapting to maneuver around that maze, right? It's
okay,
so
I
hard.
want to mention something else that I didn't think of. Adapting also.
Yeah, let me finish. Hold on, let me finish. Yeah, and then I know you want to comment on adapting, but just think about how how much you have to maneuver just to be good, right? It's absolutely ridiculous, right? Whereas you play sports, Messi's always going to be good at soccer because he just does what he does and he's godlike at it, right? That's not going to change because soccer's not going to change. He doesn't have to worry about tomorrow morning when NRS developers wake up, what are they going to change? How else are they going to shit on us? Well, they kind of did by being a side expect. If you play, well, some people might interpret it like that, but you get my point. I digress.
So, other communities, Street Fighter and Tekken, that you a lot of legacy, you can compete into your older age because there is a good amount of legacy that as you've adapted to the newer games, a lot of that newer formula is going to stay around for multiple games before they tweak it a little bit, right? Same with Tekken. But if Tekken and Street Fighter changed as much as Mortal Kombat, people wouldn't be. You would have a lot more competition, I believe, because, like, when you're 35, 45 years old, to constantly have everything change from scratch and be no legacy, it's harder, because then you have to, because money-wise. So like me, if Tekken changed every game like Mortal Kombat did, you would have to reprove that you were top before you really got any guaranteed money, right? And if the game came out and you struggled the first couple of tournaments, it would be looked at like, well, he just doesn't have it in the newer game, and the money wouldn't be there. You see my point? But because their legacy takes them a very long way, they're still extremely good players. Because just they understand the mechanics of the game, because the games don't change every time. It makes it harder to earn money when you have to reprove yourself every game. And it's harder to reprove yourself because everything changes from the ground up. And you're older, so your bills are what they are. And it's like, man, I got to relearn all this from scratch or whatever. It's just, the world changes as you get older and you have more responsibilities. I think Street Fighter and Tekken have a better chance of being fighting game esport games because they still deal with legacy. Mortal Kombat's esports will always, it's I mean, I don't even know why it is. I don't think MK should ever have an esport ever again. At least not until something changes. NRS needs to kind of change the way they do their games and kind of focus on a legacy. And I want to comment on Mike Hollow's advice for NRS as well in a second. But overall, fighting games in general are horribly imbalanced. You have a very, very, somebody said 1%ers, meaning 1%, 1% of the 1%. Well, they're so dominant because only 1%, less than 1% of the 1% actually make any money at all. And if you, what do you, can somebody look up, Dave, can you look up really quickly, what do you get for 13th place at Final Combat or like 7th place? Like, what's the payout for Final Combat? If somebody can look up the payout really quick for Final Combat, for Mortal Kombat, I'll give you.
I don't know if they have a. Do they even have a?
Do they not have a breakdown of the final Mortal Kombat Final Combat payout?
That'd
be very strange that you don't even know what money you have potential to win.
Hold on a second. Hold on. I think it is actually listed here. So, I believe this is a prize pool. First place gets $30,000.
No, that's old. Because didn't they change it?
This is old stuff.
Didn't they change it? Because it's a $200,000.
It says Pro Competition 2023, 2024. Are you talking about the money involved? It says prize pool $200,000. So this is a.
Okay, give me the breakdown.
So first place $30,000, second place half that, so 15. Third $10,000, and fourth gets $8,000. Fifth and sixth place they get $5,000, so that's the same. 7th and 8th get $2,500. And then everybody else.
Let me just say this again. 7th and 8th place. So you've competed all year for these points. You go there and you get 7th. You are one of the 8 best players on earth. And you didn't even make enough money to pay your rent for 2 months.
I mean, is this really surprising? I don't think it really all that is.
Could I give a comment on why? I have a different take on why I think fighting game esports struggle to grow versus other ones.
Sure.
Yeah, of course.
All the other big esports games that I've seen are all team-based games. They all require you to like link up with people. I don't really know any esports games that are really, really big that you play on your own. You normally have at least one other person with you, if not
Sure.
like a team of 5 or whatever. Fighting games seem to be the only ones that exist in that sphere where you're reliant on yourself, right? Most of these players are self-funded. They don't have a team going out there with them. They go out there and they'll compete and hopefully try to get top 8. But with games like Gears of War or Counter-Strike, you have a whole team. And so it's much easier to, first of all, fall back on your weaknesses because you have other people covering them. And also just getting together. Like if I wanted to get me and my friends together, my friends are all doing pretty well. Like if we wanted to get together and create a little team, we probably could. And we could go out there, we could finance it ourselves and have a good time. But with fighting games, you're on your own. And I think that really does put people off traveling because again, you don't have anyone to be your backup. It's not like say Tekken Tag 2 was a legit 2v2 game. I could play my Jinpachi but not necessarily be that good against 7 characters in the roster, but my teammate is really good at covering those, and so because we can lean on each other. But fighting games just don't have that. They don't have that team camaraderie. You're self-reliant, and so I think a lot of people are very reluctant to go out and compete, especially when you get a taste of it online, and because you have to be good on your own, and completely your fault if you lose. It's not like Overwatch where someone can drag the team down, and everyone's got to sort of like band together to help that player. If you don't know a matchup, if you don't know how to deal with a situation, you're screwed. So I think that puts people off, and I think no matter how much developers try to bridge the gap, the reality is always going to be that fighting games require the player on their own to be good and be accountable for their losses. And we know that a large majority of gamers do not deal with losing very well. We've seen how some people launch their controls across the room and throw fits. And fighting games, I would say, are at the forefront of that because you've got nobody to turn to. You can't go, hey, yo, bro, like, what were you doing? Why were you camping? Why weren't you helping me? You have to blame yourself, and people don't like taking accountability, even if it is on something as trivial as games. So I think that lends to them not being big at esports. I don't think they'll ever catch up to team-based games.
And I've said that for a while quite as well. I want to backtrack really quick to when your advice for NRS, whatever. Very similar to you. I believe this would fix this game. If they kept more of a legacy, you can then add more gimmicky mechanics because you have a full awareness of how a character is already going to play. So you're developing the gimmicky mechanic with a much better idea of how it will affect these characters, right? So if this game was built off MKX legacy or MK9 legacy, or let's say they just kept building on legacy. So let's just scrap MK11, for example. And let's just say, like, a character like Sub-Zero, if I'll use my character. Let's just say that he had not even his back 2 overhead, but let's just say he had like his back 1-2, his forward 4 strength from MKX, his 2-2, his 2-2-4, 2-1-2 from 9, these moves like this, back 1-2. So a combination of those moves, because they've added over the years, right? Clone, etc. They could change the properties of Clone, Ice Ball, however they want to do it, right? But for the most part, you know how he's going to play. And then you put in the assist mechanic and you can already understand how one was going to factor into the other. The same thing with like a Liu Kang. You could have made him a cancel character with his fireball cancels and some of the things that you've changed to him, as well as also giving him maybe his like back 3 strength from MK9 and some of his other stuff that he had, or could be Kung Lao, whether you give him his 1-1-2-1 string, his back 3 string from X, his 2-4 string from 9, and then add moves as well. Like you could add like his little Shaolin Noogie, all that stuff that he has in his headlock punch. You could keep adding moves and you would know here's how Kung Lao is going to play. He's going to be kind of a high flyer, and then these assists will work for him. For him, he would have no use to have Cyrax, right? He would have no use to have Goro. He could probably pick so many other cameos, and because you have added to the games, you've kept a certain level of legacy, you have a good understanding how these characters play, you can understand how the gimmick will play into them. When everything about the character is as new as the gimmick, there's no possible way you can have anything other than a clusterfuck of, we'll play it by ear, I don't know. And that's kind of like what their issue has been. That is how NRS can catch up to other developers like Namco.
Problem is, I know that Mike is slightly younger than we are. It's the fact that because we're essentially advocating for archetypes, right? Some of them were so unbalanced in the past that I feel like they just got so scared of actually balancing them, because I don't know whether they lack self-confidence, but there's something going on there, because a lot of this stuff, I blame a lot of WB what's happening, right? Some of the behind the scenes, but this is literally all on NRS, because I have a hard time believing that they're sitting at a meeting, discussing financial, matters, discussing businesses. A guy in a suit is going to walk up and say, "Guy, look, we need to make sure that the next game has an assist system," right? Like, they're not going to say that. That's absurd, right? So this is all in NRS. I think the game could be legacy. It could be awesome. And I was calling Tom the other day, and I'm like, man, people call us haters, but it really, really sucks to see like Tekken. Look at their numbers at Combo Breaker, 1,600. Street Fighter, 1,400 plus, and then MK. What was it? 250 or something like that. It's
274.
274. It's just like, man, oh man, it's a tough pill to swallow, right? Because this is Mortal Kombat. Who doesn't know Mortal Kombat? Everybody knows Mortal Kombat. Yet look at these numbers. They're so pathetic. And then people tell us, but these numbers, they're still fine. It's like, no, they're not fine. Who honestly think this is fine? It's crazy. Or the other word that Tom likes to use. I'm trying to be polite, but yeah, it's rough. It really, really sucks to see this, man. It really, really, really does. But
MK's numbers at Evo are even worse though. Like it's
well,
just
we
for a
we
tournament
don't
like
know what the numbers
Evolution.
are.
Yeah, but it's
Oh yeah,
under.
because it's seventh place, right? So,
Yes, I mean
um,
it's not where a
well,
game like this should be. That has
no,
because
absolutely.
it's
Also,
well known. It's not like no one knows what MK is.
yeah, exactly. But let's save this conversation for another time. I want to head out and have some lunch. I do want to thank our special guest, Mike. I really hope we can do this again, man. Are you down?
Of course, yeah. If I'm free, then I'll definitely jump on. I know it's difficult because of time zones, but
Yes,
if I'm
yes.
ever about, then I'll give you guys my schedule and we can work something out.
Well, I'm very much available throughout the summer, and I think you bring a different perspective. That's what this podcast has always been about.
Yeah.
You kind of
Just to
explain.
close, before I
Yeah, of course,
before
of
we
course.
go, I just want to say because a lot of people are asking me why are you no longer making Mortal Kombat content. Like I only do my content every now and then with Tom if I see something that's worth talking about, like Homelander. And the reason that I've stopped doing Mortal Kombat content is because in the beginning when I was making my videos, I truly believed that the amount of backlash MK1 got was going to be reflected in its sales and the microtransactions. And having spoken to some people that I know in the industry and seeing how things are going online, the game is doing really, really well sales wise and microtransaction wise. People are buying the microtransactions. And so businesses only listen when the backlash is strong enough that the money's affected. And I thought that the videos that I would make, coupled with the backlash of the community, was going to make a difference. Now, looking at what is going on, I don't think it's going to make a difference. So at that point, I sort of switched off because I was like, I think that Tekken, for example, I don't think Tekken's going to sell as much as Mortal Kombat just because of the name. And I think that the intermediate to pro players, as the game goes on, they become the lifeblood of the game, and the game's popularity sort of, I wouldn't say rests on their shoulders, but Tekken 7 certainly benefited from the modding community, the pro players, and like the more, I'd say, skilled players that are playing online and the content creators. I don't feel that that's the case for Mortal Kombat. I think no matter what content creators say, including myself, and what the pro players say, I don't think it's going to make a lick of difference based on how the game's doing. That's why I was like, this is like a losing battle at this point. The only time that it's gonna work is if the casuals are like, fuck this, and they're not saying that. So to answer the people that keep on asking me to make more combat content, there's no point in me doing it anymore. I have loads of things to say about MK1, but I don't just want to make a video to like make a video. I want it to actually go somewhere. I wanted it to have a purpose, and at that point, I would literally just be making it for to farm views. I guess I'm not saying that any other content creators are doing that because everybody else has their reasons for doing it, but that was my logic when I was making the videos before. So I don't feel like my videos were making much of a difference. I do feel like my Tekken videos sometimes. I feel like they are. I feel like a good conversation is there amongst the community. They're doing good on viewership, and the responses have been good, and so that's why I'm doing it. But I don't feel like that with the Mortal Kombat ones anymore. So I only talk about it now when I think it's fun.
Well, you also have a platform here. If anytime you want to join us,
Yeah,
it's not necessarily about videos. It's easier sometimes. Like get your complicated ideas across in a podcast format rather than make a video, edit this, do that, right? So
yeah.
your audience, we encourage your audience to to check back on Tom's channel. And again, thanks Tom for always hosting us. I do want to end it here. Again, thank you to Mike Howell for joining us. Thank for Tom as always for hosting. Please let us know what you think. Let us know whether you want to see similar discussions, maybe a little slightly more Tekken, maybe less MK, or maybe both. Just let us know what you think. I do read all the comments. Um, Thank you so much for listening. And again, I thank Mike and Tom Brady again. And we shall see you on the next episode of the New Era podcast. Bye, guys.
And I do
Cheers,
want to
guys.
thank Mike Hollow as well. There are very many people who say that they'll discuss things here or there. When push comes to shove, they don't. He reads all his comments. And if somebody wants to debate a separate point of view, he never strays away from that. So
Yeah.
thank you very much, Mike.
No worries, guys. Just thanks for having me.